I told my husband, I said, I need to do something. And he looks at me. These are going on his headstone. Why don't you go into real estate? It looks easy. And it's so easy. 87% of the people fail in the first 36 months.
But then at the end of the day, it's not your audience, right? It's not the people that you want to impact. Like, what do you want to do with your message?
Your podcast is a front of funnel opportunity for people to get to know you, like you, and trust you.
Because a lot of times I feel like going through the systems and processes, that intention disappears. It becomes repetitive and people just do it for the sake of doing it. And then the intention is lost.
If somebody said, I'm going to give you 30 extra viable years, what would you do? What would you stop? What would you reinvent? Who would you help?
What would be that initial advice? What would you tell them?
Put blinders on and just do your best.
We've got some
Hey,
fresh new
I'm
young
Luis.
talent
And
doing some
I'm
things that I
Luis.
know you haven't
And you're
heard
listening to the
before.
Content is Profit podcast.
Listen.
Let's go.
That's right.
I was sweating because I didn't know if that was the button, but I got it. I got it right. Guys, if you're enjoying this show, go ahead and follow it in your favorite podcasting platform. Ring that bell or check or whatever it is so you know those episodes are dropping on your phone 3 times a week. Let's go.
That is right. I just want to mention, I read the right line. So if you are happy because of that, make sure you share today's episode. And if we get to help you move one step closer towards your goal, please don't forget to give them a follow as well. And the star review on the podcast.
I know you broke your mess up intro streak.
I know. I had to. You know those signs that say days without an accident? Yeah, it went back to zero
It went
last
back to
episode.
zero, yeah,
so
no.
today is 1.
Oh man, okay, well today's case came through an event from our good friends at Capshow, and oh boy, what a surprise that was.
She is a total badass in the real estate world with over 1,800 transactions. Ka-ching, ka-ching. Since you don't have the sound in there we go. And she has also been conquering the broadcasting world by producing and hosting over 50, that is 50 TV shows.
I know, maybe we need to talk about, the Bizra sitcom. Just saying.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, absolutely. That'll be fun.
Not to mention that she's also the host of Kim Talks Resilience and founder of Resilient New Media. So excited, so stoked to have her here in Contents Profit.
That is right. Honestly, she is like the champion of the female founders and entrepreneurs. It's absolutely amazing, man. Like her podcast, dude, is pretty cool.
Top.
Pretty cool. Guys, please welcome the one and only Kim Hayden. Woo-hoo. Welcome, Kim.
I feel like I'm walking onto the stage of Johnny Carson. Now, you guys are too young to know Johnny Carson, but Ed McMahon, I've always wanted it, Ed McMahon. I kind of look at myself as like, I want to be the next Johnny Carson, but yeah, you guys
I
just
love
totally crushed it. Totally
There you
crushed
go.
it.
Well,
Thank you.
We made your dream come true.
I'm
saying.
just going to say,
Absolutely.
when we first started creating these intros, our whole thing was, let's not introduce people as if they were on a podcast. Let's introduce people as if they were coming out onto a stage. And you just said that. So thank you so much. That's like the biggest compliment we could ever get.
Yes.
There you go. Now, if you have one of those $1 million checks like Ed McMahon, I'll take that too.
Now that you mention it.
Working on it, it just comes out under the table.
Yeah.
Kim, I'm very excited, right? Because obviously, we met through the amazing community at Capshow, one of our partners in our business, and you were telling me about all these projects, that you've been involved over time in media, and then now with your podcast and the network that you want to build. But you also are this amazing person in the real estate world, and you started to tell a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, stop, we gotta record this. So I want to share a little bit of your story, like where you start. Like obviously you are in Canada right now, right? My wife is Canadian. I was like, I just met the person that loves Canada the most, more than you. when we talk. So why don't you share a little bit about your very successful real estate background, and then what are the things that you're doing today with media?
Alrighty. Well, first, I am from Kansas, so I'm American. Been in Canada since 1995. And I'm actually from a trailer park. I'm a hairdresser, single mom, teenage mom from Kansas that ended up somehow waiting tables in Vegas and ended up marrying a Canadian and ended up in Canada and have literally just, I guess, by always wanting to serve people, ended up in great positions and opportunities. In 99, we landed in Calgary, Alberta, and my husband, this is back now. You guys, as children, will remember this stage where your mom's doing all those arts and crafts on the walls and stuff, right? You know, your sponge painting and all that was very popular in the 90s. Well, my husband came home from work one time. He'd been on the road, and it was a veritable forest in our front foyer. And I'm looking, I'm going, you're going to find your children on a milk carton if I don't get a job. And I had always worked for somebody because growing up, lower income, very lower income, trailer park born. We had a time where my parents did have a home, but then we ended up in my grandparents' basement. And I mean, we were so poor. My mom was a single mom of 4 daughters, and we were so poor that my mom worked full-time one job, and she worked part-time waiting tables, and she still qualified for food stamps, which we drove across the city in a crappy car, like a car that honestly would not pass any kind of inspection to be on the road and to use those food stamps. But my mother always taught us to sit up and be proud of who we are. And I think a lot of what that teaching is what kind of led me into the entrepreneurial space. I got here to Calgary and I knew nobody. I had no work sphere. I had no school sphere. Was new to the city, and we moved into a new community that only had like 220 homes.
Wow.
And I told my husband, I said, I need to do something. And he looks at me. These are going on his headstone. Why don't you go into real estate? It looks easy. And it's so easy. 87% of the people fail in the first 36 months. That's, I mean, it is, it's a hard business. Everybody sits back because nobody sees what it's like a duck business, right? Real estate agents are like ducks. Everybody sees you just floating along the water. And they don't see that mad scramble going on underneath the water just to keep afloat, keep positioned, right? And that's what real estate is. It's like baseball. It's like the duck. It's like, you know, all these things where people only see these spurts of energy. They don't see everything that's working. But
so did you go into the industry because you thought also it was easy, or do you had already kind of an idea of, or you just laughed on his face like
truthfully, I wanted to open a coffee shop. I love conversation. I love feeding people, and I love conversation. However, at that time, I didn't want to, and a lot of women will understand this, I didn't want to ask my husband for the money to start a business when I didn't know how to run a business. And when he said, why don't you go into real estate? I figured in my head, okay, I'll go into real estate. I'll just do it because that's just what I do. I go into anything and I just learn how to do it and I do it. And I'll do that. And then in a few years, I'll have my own money and I can actually open my own coffee shop. My intention was never to be in real estate long term. It was literally a means to the end. Well, 14 years, every award you can manage from 2 different brokerages, civic awards. So we got the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award in 2012. That's you guys know Commonwealth and all this stuff, right? Americans don't tend to understand that. A little bit, but that's a really distinctive award that's put out every few years.
Wow.
And we were identified as community builders because of the real estate business that we had done.
Amazing.
And then we got, so basically that resulted in about 8 times. On average, I would make about 8 times what the average real estate agent made. And I did it all through storytelling. Yeah.
You also mentioned a very big number that to me was like in the millions of dollars, right?
We generated 7.5 million in our career. Yeah, 7.5 million in commissions. So
where's the coffee shop?
I got picked up for a TV show, and it's way more fun than running a coffee shop. And unlike you, I'm not getting up at 5 a.m.
That is interesting. Funny enough, the podcast episode that I listened from your show was with a founder of a coffee shop.
Yes.
Yeah, the one that lives in Naples, like a few miles away from the Everglades. That sounded super interesting. But we have this concept here too, which I think it kind of like applies in the media world as well, which is we call it coffee serendipity. And we've met some incredible people at coffee shops. We love, well, I personally love going to coffee shops and doing work over there. And sometimes randomly I meet some amazing, amazing people, right? Some of them have become guests on our show, right? They're like, they started some funds, they're investors. I met this one guy with like 4 million subscribers on YouTube that he was editing his own videos out of this like crappy computer. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, oh, this is so cool. And then he showed me his channel. I was like, there's no way. He's like, he's giving talks at Google, at some of the biggest places, right? And when I see this and I compare it to a platform, to podcasting, for example, you get that sort of serendipity as well, right? You start connecting with some incredible people. And, you said you describe yourself as a resilient person. If you can describe yourself with one word, it would be resilience. And at the same time, we are believers of surrounding yourself with the right people, right? And having that community that pushes you around. So I'm curious, did you experience some sort of serendipity around your journey in meeting the right people, right? Because I don't think somebody decides to, hey, I'm just gonna launch this and it's all success from there, right? Like you probably have to connect with some people. There's some peaks and valleys. I'm a little bit curious on who you connect with.
Well, it's okay. So it's kind of like let's look at this. Edison developed the light bulb, and he talks about how he did not make it work on the first time. It took 99 pivots
Yeah.
in order to get there. And theirs are little small things, but they're all interconnected. So I host the Back to Business Calgary podcast for one of the most affluent business clubs in Calgary. It's typically always been corporate. I had never been there before. And I got invited just after COVID to go. And I'm going, oh, I didn't realize there was a business club. Just a real estate agent. I didn't realize. So I go to this and it was very cool. But the GM, she offers a tour to everybody. I go walk on the tour. And I'm getting really impressed by how they pivoted all throughout COVID to keep that club going when nobody could go to the club. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is a real entrepreneurial spirit. Like you guys did not sit back and wait for the paychecks to come in. You guys went out and found ways to survive. She turned and looked at me. She goes, you're Kim, aren't you? Kim from Kim's Kitchen. And I said, yes, I am. And she goes, I know Chef Leanna. She's my BFF. She was on your show several times. And I said, oh. And then I said, have you guys ever thought of doing a podcast? A podcast from a business club that is a 3-pillar post. Basically, 1, to profile your active members, 2, to connect your new members, and 3, to let the city know that you're pivoting in positive manners and you're engaging on new media. And she goes, no, we didn't. But can you do that for us? So these all connect. That connection at the and this is where don't badmouth, don't burn your bridges, don't be. Are you guys PG-13? What is your rating here? Because
you can say
anything.
Don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole. And this is the problem that I see a lot of people walking around nowadays is they go, my worth is this. And you know what, if you don't like it, it's, and they actually have a very entitled, mean disposition. Whereas I didn't make any money off of Chef Leanna coming onto those shows. What I got was great connections. And she validated with her experience as a Red Seal chef coming on my show, right?
Yeah.
And now that has led to this. And how that happened was a commercial that we made for a Cheap Seats movie theater. Cheap Seats in Canada, those $1, $2, $5 movie theaters you can go to. It's where you take the kids so they don't destroy other people's experiences. It's second-run movies. But that was my market in real estate. I knew my niche. I was a family real estate agent. I mirrored my life, my clients. So I had a commercial running on the screen there, and that was picked up by producers for Shaw TV, and that's how I got the TV show that I met Leanna, that now I know the GM at this club, and this club has brought forward several more podcasts that I don't host. I actually train people
Yeah.
who want to be podcasters.
Yeah.
I believe most people can be trained into it. If I can be trained to pause and breathe and remember
Yeah.
script, anybody can be trained to be a good host.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
my brother still needs a little bit of training
I
here
mean,
and there,
still
but
going. We yeah, the transcriptions cannot pick up my perfect English. Kim, there's a concept there, right? Like obviously, this thing led to the other thing, and the other thing led to this connection led to this conversation to X, right? And for us, for our show, we saw the same thing. We encountered an opportunity like that 20 episodes in. We're what, 440 right now as we're recording. But our whole business and our whole like mindset completely flipped when we saw that. And today we're sitting in our studio where we have like a couple rooms that people come in here and they record, and we have our office here. And this business, we ended up buying it 2 months ago from a guest that came to the show. But when he first came, he came twice. The first time that he came was like before the first 100 episodes. We never thought that was going to be an opportunity, but we knew there was going to be something down the road. And we do our best to maintain those relationships. Now, here's the funny part. Like whenever like we have conversations with like brand new people in the industry or people that are launching their shows, right? To paint that picture, it's an interesting challenge, right? Because you're like, okay, we understand that some businesses might have the need right now and they see podcasts as a way to get, money or capitalize immediately, right? Versus other channels, or somebody told them like, hey, I made $7 million out of a podcast episode. I'm like, what? How? Like 20, whatever, right? And there's like these many ways that you can actually monetize a show. But what we found that is very consistent is this relationship. So what will be your advice for maybe like that business owner that's coming in, or that person that's launching a show and is trying to find their footing? They know this is the way that they want to communicate, right? For us, it was that way. We're like, this is the only way that we can be consistent. We've tried all the others, and this is the only way that fit in our personalities to be consistent. What would be that initial advice? What would you tell them?
I would say put blinders on and just do your best. I think a lot of people go, everybody else is talking about this. How am I going to do it? Right? Why would somebody listen to me? Shakespeare is quoted in saying that there's only 7 original storylines. And yet each voice brings a different awareness to a subject. And message matters. People matter. And for every one person that's willing to step up and speak and be seen, there's 1,000 people who are sitting there going, I wish I had that courage. Or I wish I was in that person's spot. Or that's who I want to be. And if somebody is truly looking at podcasting, they have to understand this is the long game. Frequency and consistency, I believe you guys say. I absolutely agree. Frequency and consistency, and understanding that podcasting is equity in messaging, meaning that there are people out there who will not read your newsletter, so they're not getting your message. There are people out there who are visually impaired and will not watch your video, and they are not getting your message. By creating an audible space that people can engage in when they're busy, or if they're, have a physical limitation. My husband is dyslexic. My daughter is dyslexic. So reading and writing is not their best friend until ChatGPT. Oh my God. love the AI that's coming out because it's opened up entire worlds.
Yeah.
But the reality is a business person today, you don't need everybody to be your client. You need one person at a time to be your client. And I remember working with new real estate agents, and they're going, I've only had 20 showings. And I said, how many people can buy the house? And they go, well, 1. And I said, then you only need 1 showing for this sale to be successful. So if you've had 20 showings, what's wrong within your product placement or presentation?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is put the blinders on. Don't look at what everybody else is doing. You do you. You do you genuinely, authentically from your voice, what you think your podcast. There is no set rule as to what your podcast should be.
Yeah.
It is what you choose for it to be. And the more authentic and real you are within your messaging and the people you bring on, the closer you will be to that next great client, that next great speaking opportunity. And if you're expecting people to come along and pay you to sponsor your show, suck it. Not going to happen. Not going to happen unless you are a well-known name
Yeah.
that can drive downloads fast. But if you can drop frequently and consistency, I promise, give it a 1 year, truly lean in hard, 52 episodes, you will see that all those connections is where the gold is.
Yeah.
And you will see it in your business.
I love it. I mean, just last night we had somebody come in here and record, and he rotates co-host, right, which is super interesting to me. And the co-host that came last night is somebody that works in cybersecurity, and he came into the studio, and they were doing a first interview, so he waited with me in the lobby, and I was working, and he's just chatting, and he's like, man, this is the first time. This looks kind of cool, whatnot. And then like educate me about podcasts. So I started, podcast 101. It's like, what do you know? He's like, nothing. So we started talking about this, and main question, right? How do you monetize podcasts? I'm like, okay, here we go. There's many ways, and then immediately, right, his mind goes to sponsorships and these things, and it's funny how the mind levitates towards there. Maybe it's like because it's very top of funnel for a lot of people that are consuming mass market shows, for example, right? And it was good practice for me, but his take was like, well, if it's based on downloads, this is a math problem, right? If it's like a $25 CPM, then there's services, I'm sure, in Asia, whatnot, and he works with a lot of these teams overseas because of his job, where you can pay them to download all the episodes, and then the sponsor can pay you. And then in my mind, I'm like, well, that it's kind of,
sketchy.
But then at the end of the day, it's not your audience, right? It's not the people that you want to impact. Like, what do you want to do with your message, right? Who do you want to impact? Like you said, if I'm talking to that one person and I can make I can change their perception, I can make them think a little bit different, I can trigger action, right? I can inspire. That's worth it to us. And then people are going to start sticking to that message and go on. So I love what you're saying, and I totally agree with that.
Well, and if you changed up co-host, would that just mean you'd adopt more brothers?
With me? No,
Yeah.
that was, I have enough with Fonzie.
Too much to handle.
Too much.
I
know.
Kim, I'm a little bit curious on your broadcasting experience, right? I mean, you said, sounds like you had a cooking show. First of all, that sounds amazing. We need those links to, watch it. And I
don't know where they are. It was through Shaw TV, and they own all the content. So I had a really, really good deal. So it's not 50 different shows. It's 50 episodes, broadcast episodes.
Still
so
amazing.
Seven different shows.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's called Kim's Kitchen. If you Google Kim's Kitchen Shaw TV, there is, I think they still run it like 3 a.m. in the backwaters of Ontario. Because I mean, once in a while I'll get a weird email pop up and I'll say, what was the name brand of those pants? And it's like,
yeah.
Okay. Not like, that's like 6 years old, 7 years old. And so, in all truth, I do not watch my own content. I do not watch or listen to anything I do. I just put it out there, and I figure if it's not good, that's your problem, not mine.
Yeah.
I just have fun making it,
Yeah. I like that
So,
approach. I like that
yeah,
approach of just creating. And I mean, I'm sure you're busy doing a lot of things. Your focus can be like, hey, I just created 3 hours of content. I'm going to consume 3 hours of content. Like, no, you probably don't have time for that. I'm curious on the side of the broadcasting side of things. Was that your first experience with media? What was the translate? How did that translate into what you're doing now?
It was very interesting. So in Canada, the Broadcast Association is is the CRTC is very different than in the United States. So we have mandates in Canada for a certain percentage of our media to be Canadian. And if we
Mm.
didn't have that on the broadcast channels, there would be no Canadian content because Canada's population is less than California. And it's, it's a wealth factor. I mean, Texas now generates more wealth than Canada in its entirety. So
Wow.
Canada does have some factions in there to protect. So then it allows the broadcasters to put money into local talent and allows them to get also to find local talent.
Mm.
I mean, it's all Canadian. Honestly, Canadian entertainment is going to be far far drier. Like Canada, they're just everything's very clean, very sweet in Canada. It's not as divisional as you'll find in the United States.
Yeah.
So some people has called Canadian entertainment boring, but the reality is it is a little bit drier. So I
Yeah.
was very different. I was very different. I did the whole rockabilly thing. We went back to the 1950s. I had chefs in my kitchen. I would interview local people,
Nice.
that were like not influencers. These were people who are actual impact makers.
Yeah.
So it's and nothing against influencers. That's whatever. That's the 30 somethings generation. I was looking for people who are running businesses and so forth. And people, honestly, who are top CEOs of unicorn businesses, $1 billion businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses. These people, they have their LinkedIn account. They don't have
Maybe.
anything else.
With
They
no
don't care.
no profile picture. Yeah, it's
No
like their
profile
name.
picture. They've got like that little gray head on
Yeah.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, is this a real
Yeah.
person? But yeah, so that's where I learned all. But I was very, very blessed. I had Jimmy Cummings and he just unfortunately passed away very early in life due to cancer. But he was with Shaw TV for 30 years, and he was one of their lead producers. And he not only took me under wing, but he also, my two younger children, ended up coming into studio and learning on
Oh,
true
wow.
studio equipment.
That's cool.
Like my middle child learned audio on the big boards, the big studio boards. And so I learned run of show.
Yeah.
And run of show to me was no different than a run of a new listing of creating those systems and such to ensure. And I could record in one day in 11 hours flat, 2 half-hour shows, 2 half-hour episodes with be 3 sets, 2 transitions, and 2 different outfits. So I could actually move. I knew exactly where I was. So we would do all the kitchen, and then we'd pivot and we would do all of the interview, and then we pivot and we do all of the DIYs. And I would be able to go back and forth and move all my clothing and everything. I knew everything on Run a Show, and I could put quality content in the
Yeah.
can, 2 episodes in one day.
Yeah.
So I know how to economize time and
Yeah.
systemize the production, and
Mm.
that's what I
What-
do in podcasting.
I love it. What's the value for you, for example, meant in your mind of a systematic process, right? Because here's where we come from. Like we tried for like so many years, like before the show launched, on creating the new things. And this is a constant conversation that happens between me and Fonzie, right? Like Fonzie is incredible, very creative, right? Very free flowing in how he produces things. I am the opposite. I feel like I'm creative in other ways, but I like a system. I like this is the thing that we do every single day. This is like the kind of like the run of show that you did. And then I personally feel like that has been a big part of like how we've been able to be consistent, right? And like you said earlier, you're like, if people listen and they like it, great. If not, that's great too. It's fine. And we put our message out there because it has value. So in my mind, that's very valuable, right? Yeah. But how do we talk to people that are creative? And maybe I'm asking for Fonzie. Who knows? Maybe maybe help me convince him, Kim.
You know what? I was probably 30 episodes in before I had a full comprehensive checklist from inception to activation to processing and everything. And the system that the checklist, and that's actually just what we call it in office. The checklist is so if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, everything can still happen. And if you're building a business and your podcast is one piece of the business, so your podcast is a front of funnel opportunity for people to get to know you, like you, and trust you. It is one of the most intimate forms of communication because you're right in somebody's ear. And in a society where we are at record loneliness, they say within the next decade that 1 out of 7 men will not have a friend. These are real things. These are very real things. And we're seeing mental health podcasts come online. We're seeing all these things come online. And these are connectivity points for people, whether they're looking to purchase something, develop something, grow something, or just be connected or entertained.
Yeah.
So the reality is if your podcast, if you treat it like a piece of your business, whatever your business is your business your brand? Are you selling a product? Are you, inventing something? Whatever your business is, for the purpose of developing your podcast, treat that with as much intention as if you went out and hired somebody to build a $5,000 funnel. And then you were putting $500 a week behind it on Instagram or Facebook. Because you don't have to put that $5,000 into a funnel. You can put that $5,000 into your podcast, which becomes your voice. And having that system, whatever works for you, if you like to have 4 audiograms from each episode, but no video, go for it. Whatever works for you. But have a systems checklist, because if anything were to happen to you, God forbid, what if the world had a pandemic and you got sick for 4 months? Weird shit happens all the time.
Yeah.
Have your system so that your business can continue to flourish, even if you have to have somebody else host your podcast for a while. Maybe you'll have a guest host for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe you go and you grow this to where you now have 100,000 downloads over a 12-month period, which is totally doable, folks. You have all the content that can be repurposed and repurposed and purposed again and purposed again. You can dredge out content from 5 years ago and find something that's applicable to today.
Yeah.
But that can become part of your company that you sell, or part of the company others can invest in. So that's why I like systems. If I get hit by a bus and I am unable to actually do it, I know that I can walk somebody through the system, or they can go through the system, and it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, first of all, if my brother gets hit by a bus, poor bus, first of all, because he's been working out. He's been working out a lot. So I'm going to say poor bus.
That bus was split in half.
Yeah, you'll Superman that.
Yeah, right? We kind of like dabble a little bit on this in one of our previous conversations here on the podcast, which was, and just, I like systems and processes. I am, yes, more on the creative side. But for me, you mentioned it is about having the intention. Because a lot of times I feel like going through the systems and processes, that intention disappears because it becomes monotonous, right? It's just repetitive, and people just do it for the sake of doing it. And then the intention is lost. And, let's say when you're crafting a hook that has no intention, it's not going to hook anybody. But within the hook, there might be space for creativity, right? Like, how can you, create systems and processes and at the same time leave room for a certain amount of creativity in there? And I see you have something to say here. I'm going to add an extra question in there for you. Okay. The other part is, when do we stop creating intrinsically, right? Because at first we're like, if this works for you, do it. And that was our initial advice. It still is, right? For many people, it's like, first you need to get used to creating consistently, right? So do what's easy for you. Like if it's writing, if it's, being on camera, on the podcast, etc. But I think it gets to a point, right? And this is me personally, lately, I've been actually debating a lot of this, which is, the audience demands something. Like the people that consume, they give you indicators, right? The signals of what they want. Do we need to pivot just like those businesses that you mentioned in the past, right? And do we potentially need to say, okay, guess what? Now I'm consistent doing this. I got experience doing this. I might have to dabble into something that I don't enjoy as much, or I need to develop this new skill, or potentially delegate this part to somebody else within my business, right? So I'm curious on those two takes, right? The create just because it's like, yeah, just do it because you like this, or do we create because we're trying to also sell a product and kind of like have a fit within an audience? And then the other aspect of things is like, how do you see that creativity inside of the systems and processes?
Okay, so I don't put any parameters on the creative assets that come out of my podcast. And my podcast, just so you know, I never send questions to anybody, because I want this to be a conversation. I feel that the most painful interviews I have done is people who show up with notes and they are stiff and they are and nobody nobody can connect with the textbook. So I leave those fluid, and I about every 13 episodes or season I work to I don't put any season 1, season 2 or anything like that on my podcast, but I kind of look at things about every 13th episode. I'm going to shake up. I'm going to change the look of my audiograms. I'm going to try out a new thing for my shorts. We change things up. We'll change out the thumbnails. So 13. There's a reason why they always had 13 as a season in broadcast television. It's because that's a quarter, and we as human nature will work in quarters. If you want to quit smoking, you're going to take 3 months, which is a quarter, and we know that you can recreate that habit. If we want to hook you on a season, they have this whole story that happens in a TV show, right? If you look at it, so it's building, and they hook you, and then they bring you down.
Oh yeah.
And whether or not they want to close it. So that's if you've looked at your podcast and go, okay, I know that every 13th episode, I want to go back and take a look. Who is, and always know who your avatar is. Do not, I love this. This is my favorite from real estate agents. I'm going to pick on real estate agents. They go, who's your audience? And they'll go, anybody who's looking to buy a house. It's like, you're an idiot. No. Who is your audience? I was successful because, and I had agents tease me all the time. Agents made a quarter of what I made. Would tease me all the time that I worked in my bubble. Here's the reality. I knew exactly who my avatar was. So I knew what my marketing materials were. I knew where I would show up and meet them, and I knew how to engage them.
Yeah.
I did not go beyond that. And that's okay. If you want to, but see, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in business. So you asked the second question. So yes, I leave fluidity around the actual content. If I see something cool, I just had a short sent to me by my husband on Instagram. He goes, "Ooh, this is really cool." It's like, "Ooh, that is cool. I want to know how they did that, and I want to do that in the next round." Or maybe we're going to implement that on our new show, Pod Talk Today, that's going to be launching in October. Maybe that's what our shorts are going to look like. So there's all sorts on the creativity side to expand in the assets.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I'm curious, by the way, when you have a chance, send us that, because I'm curious. I want to see how that, that reel looks like.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really, because it was like a stock motion with video with motion, right?
Yeah.
So it's that stop, but it was all these different. It was just really cool, and I'm going,
Interesting.
That's cool. So I have that saved. I'll share that with you. I'm going, I think that's going to be my Pod Talk Today
Love it.
template for the shorts. But to the other side is, when does it become too much where you're 100% for business? That's up to the individual. Because the truth is, you look at the Diary of a CEO, people know they're showing up. That dude is there. That is his front of funnel. He does everything is inbound calls from that show. But you know what you're showing up for. If I'm showing up to, so let's take hypothetically. somebody has started a women in menopause podcast, right? Their product that they sell is going to be, let's say, some sort of cannabis. And I don't know if this actually exists out there, but I think
Yeah.
this actually could be a good show.
Mm.
Maybe their product is some sort of uh, cannabis, set that would have, moisturizers, conditioners for your hair, things like that. So I'm just making all this up because there are certain things that this happens. If they're only talking about the product, but they're not talking to the person or talking to that's where you start crossing the line. If
Mm.
every 3 minutes you have a sales pitch, that becomes a turnoff
Yeah.
because story sells.
Yeah.
Story sells. The story is the sign of a wealthy mind that then will turn into a wealthy pocket if you know how to tell the story. There's reasons that bards were a career choice along with, uh, um, you know, uh, people, along with bakers
Yeah.
and um, smiths and such, like candle makers. A
Yeah.
bard was a job, and it was somebody who had the art of story.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's so powerful, right? And I think like depending on your personality type, like if you're running your shows, like how do you can figure out how to balance those out, right? And I think in our case, that's what the conversations that we're having every single day with our team as well, right? Right now, Mava came on board as a producer, and we're going through all this process for the first time externally. We're externalizing it, right? We had the checklist for 400 plus episodes, but most of the checklist was outdated because we continue to iterate. Every episode is a new thing. I'm like, oh, we can add this here, and because you're so involved in the process, so I would recommend people start documenting, that process. Put it in a piece of paper. Put it in your project management tool, right? Put it on Notion,
Yeah.
and then revise it. Like you said, you revise it, every 13 months. At the end of the day, like we're very frequent, right? We do it 3 times a week, so that gives us opportunity almost every
Yep.
single day to kind of go on top of the project. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is like the standard. You can set it up, and then your team will
Exactly.
elevate that, right? And I
A
think that's the cool.
framework. A framework
Exactly,
to work
the
with it.
framework
Yeah.
for your production. And this works with podcasts. This works with like any type of content, clips. We met over one of those calls where we share a little bit of the framework on how our team does a lot of the clipping that we do, right? And then who knows, you'll take that and elevate it, right? And most people will take that class and they'll elevate it, and they do their own version. So I think we can lean on that.
Yeah, and I love what you share about the stories, right? It goes hand in hand with one of the actually first frameworks that we ever developed, which is the publishing pyramid. And everything starts with the message, right? The bottom is the message. And this thought got to my mind right now, actually, as you were saying this. And I'm definitely going to go and explore a little bit. But I believe that a lot of people do not publish, or they are afraid of publishing because they don't have that clarity on who are they talking to, what are the stories they want to share, right? And they maybe just see it as a vehicle for, I have to sell, which they feel like, they're just pushing things, and therefore they don't have the confidence to get in front of the camera. But if they knew who they're talking to, what stories they got to tell, I feel the medium might actually become a little bit irrelevant, right? Like they might enjoy being better on camera, but if they know exactly what they're going to say, they might be able to easily write it as well.
Have confidence in your brand. As we transition from the last 100, 200 years in the industrial age, we move back into a creator's age. So we're in a time where your uniqueness and your life experiences can be capitalized on. They are valued. We're in a time where we're going to see disruption within schools and disruption within community, and people are going to be looking for mentorship. I interviewed a gal who is one of the leading lawyers in Canada, and a fascinating conversation. And she was walking me through how it goes to be in a law law office, right? So this gal's a leading lawyer. She's been written up, and her big project, her legacy project she will retire on, is the LNG pipeline that is going through the Canadian Rockies to connect the
Wow.
energy sources across Canada. So this is a big project. This is a 20-year project she's planning.
Pipeline next to your house,
No,
know,
no,
bathroom
through the
pipes.
mountains that you ski on. But she talked about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And she said the challenge she sees, a lot of lawyers are going to be coming in. A lot of law offices no longer have a central office.
Mhm.
They're doing remote working. And yet new lawyers, just like new hairdressers and new doctors, all these people do an internship and they learn from the people of which they're working. And if we remove that, how are they going to accelerate? How are they going to accelerate to the top of their game, to the top of the opportunity? It's going to be through these experts speaking to them that will have coaching programs and mentorship programs available. And so it's really about creating connectivity where we've lost connectivity in a society now that is transitioning from hammer and tong to voice and message.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned the rise of AI with good opportunities, and I agree. I think there's a lot of good opportunities, but I feel like it's already being abused in a way for messaging and storing and content creation, right? I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, this thing can do the work for me. I'm just going to put it out there, right? I'm going to feed it the prompts of what is my audience, what I wanted to tell them, the story of my business, and then let it create all the content. I personally believe, like you said, connectivity is key, and people are going to seek more in-person type of stuff. They want to see people's faces and know it's not a robot talking about. Yeah, you were about to say something, so maybe you
I was going to say the AI is only as good as the person who puts the information or the prompts in.
Yeah.
And AI, when you get an article, so I'm going to use my husband as an example. My husband is wicked smart. There was a magazine back in the 90s, it still may be around, called Cigar Magazine. And this is like the unicorn magazine. At one point in time, when I first met my husband had like lunch with half the people in Cigar Magazine. He is wicked smart, yet he's dyslexic. And what would take him a week, 10 days to generate, he now can do in 2 or 3 days. He still puts a conscious effort to ensure that it reflects what he has to say.
Yeah.
But AI has enabled somebody who truly is genius level. And think about it. Think about how many actors are dyslexic. Think about how many wickedly smart people out there that all of these AIs are going to open up. The difference is true people with true messaging and true intellect will take that as a starting point and massage that article, and they'll change that language just enough so it's truly them, right? It's truly the meaning behind the message. I was speaking to a gal who is in film and television, and this is a real hard one because we have the writer's strike. And I know a lot of people who are creatives, and writing comes intrinsically. Like it's part of who they are. They're really, really getting very protective around, I'm a writer. And, I think we should ban all AI. The reality is you could take somebody. I think Will Smith is somebody who's dyslexic. I think there's quite a few, and I shouldn't bring up Will Smith because he just shouldn't have done what he did. But there's a lot of people with great stories that would not be able to tell them if not for AI.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's a respect level that we have to do, but AI is moving so stinking fast. What we don't realize is we think of AI in the creative. I just interviewed a guy who's using AI to diagnose cardiology issues. So they just dropped this program called Cardi AI in Canada that's in all of the ambulances. It's an ambulatory cardiac testing. and it's all done with a drop of your blood, because
Wow.
in your blood is whether or not you're in cardiac arrest, because it creates certain proteins and enzymes in your blood, or if this is a symptom of something else going on, right?
Yeah.
Is, because a lot of people will mistake a panic attack with a cardiac arrest, right?
Yeah.
Am I having a heart attack?
Yeah.
So that's AI. That's
Yeah.
AI. AI is right now being applied, and I don't think we can slow the bus. I don't think we can, and I will tell you why. The easiest application for AI was obviously in the creator space.
Mhm.
However, what we're learning from the creator space is being applied to AI in the medical space. And we've only started scraping this. There is AI that's going to save our children and grandchildren. There is AI that's going to be coming along that will actually help in the medical field. Generation Alpha, that's children under 12 years of age who have only been in technology. They were born in technology, right? They
Yeah.
will never live a life without technology. Those children actually have the opportunity to live healthy well into their 130th, 140th year due to the technology that's being developed for med tech through AI. Now, what a gift if you could give your child, if somebody said, I'm going to give you 30 extra viable years,
Yeah.
what would you do?
Take
Yeah.
it.
What would you stop? What would you reinvent? Who would you help?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if we said, we're going to give you a third more viable life, everybody gets to Betty White this life, right? Everybody gets that. We know genetically that's not the thing. So I say
Yeah.
that instead of fighting against AI, just use it to your best ability. I think that people will end up picking up the cues on AI. When you see unlock one more time on somebody's, podcast title. Hey, I'm guilty sometimes. My poor podcast, Kim Talks and 500 Doors, are kind of the shoemaker's children, because this is where I test a lot of stuff out. So
Yeah.
sometimes I do cut corners on, I just like, oh, well, I'll just adjust this just so it gets done. But
It always like comes
yeah,
back unlock.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unlock just of it. No,
Wait, one second, real quick. I mean, I love this. Obviously, the question at first was from the point of view on the creative aspect, which what you mentioned, I think it's interesting. I think obviously, like, it hurts people's ego, right? Like you said, especially creative people. That is, the thing that comes from within. Now something else is kickstarting that process, right? But like referring to what we talked before, it's about intention as well. Yes, there is people that are using it and abusing it, and that's probably why a lot of people have a lot of friction with it, because they see all these people just pumping things without intention. But then you have other people that are using it with intention, and they're creating some incredible things. But obviously then you have the other side of the coin of AI that we actually haven't really explored that much. At least I haven't explored as much, which is all what you were just talking about right now, right? Like how many people is going to help, like this technology is going to enable a lot of progress in a lot of areas and a lot of good for a lot of people. And I personally believe that is a tool, just like anything else. So it depends on the people that is using it, right? The people that are leveraging it, and it can either be used for good or it can either be used for bad as well. So hopefully, the focus and the clever people, the very smart people, use it for the good side of things. But on the creative aspect, if you're listening right now and you're maybe fighting a little bit of your ego, because that's personally me, on kickstarting the creative process with AI, it is a viable thing, but don't forget to put your intention and then your own intellect into it, and just like Kim said, massage it and turn it into your own piece.
Yep.
I think that is just vital right there.
I totally agree. No, I think we have to go back to what you guys talked about, Lewis. That frequency and consistency. You can be out there and just copy and paste whatever Chat GPT or CAPTCHA or whatever gives you. Copy and paste it and just put it out. But at the end of the day, frequency and consistency is going to be are you engaging? And
Yeah.
I think that that's where the difference is
Yeah.
is it's all these pieces. It's all these pieces. Is your
Yeah.
message strong enough? Do you know who your avatar is? Are you dropping regularly? Can people count on you to show up? Like these are it's a big recipe. It's it's a reason why. What is it? What's the stats in podcasting? Something like 80% of people won't make it past their 8th episode.
Yeah.
Is actually 93%.
93% will not
Yeah.
make it past the 8th episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tell people 8, 26, and 100. These are numbers you need to know. If you pass 8, you've made it past 90%. You get to 26. This is when we're going to pull everything apart and reevaluate. The beauty of podcasting is it's fluid.
Yeah,
It's fluid.
It's so good.
And at 100, woohoo! You're up in like the top, what is it? The top 3% of all podcasts make it to 100, right?
Yeah.
It's like a very small percentage. So, but it takes work. It takes work. What was your
Yeah.
first podcast? How long did it take you to edit down and fully maximize? So when we're talking about podcasting has the ability to be omnipresent, right? So we have our blog, we have, our audio, our short reels, we have, our quote steals, we have all of these things that can come out of a singular podcast. How long did it take you to edit down before we had awesome AI
I mean, our process is about 6 stages. One of those stages, which is selecting that information, a human is normally about 3 hours for a full 1 hour episode. That's what our team used to do. Distill the information, grabbing that. And we talk a lot about this, right? Like we like to test all the tools, and we like to tinker. Like just yesterday we were chatting on Slack with a team about a new process for copy, right? And we're like, hey, somebody in our community that we highly respect shared that they're doing this process for their stuff. Can we try it, right? And I think it's encouraging people to try it and give them their spin. And also there's a quality control process, right, that goes with it. Like, is this aligning with our message? Like everything that we put online is going to live there forever. And I there's one phrase that I love. I can't remember the guest that brought it, but it came from the show, and they're like, look, I want my kid to look at what I'm putting out in the future and be proud of who I am today, right? And that to me hit hard because like he mentioned that when Luca was born. Luca is 4 now. And, maybe one day he'll tune into Contents Profit and be like, well, this, my dad was actually, smart. The people that he hangs out are actually cool, right? And that's important to think about because, if you're putting something that's really poor out there, that it doesn't really align, I don't know how I feel about that. And it's a constant balance, right, on how we get to that point.
So if we really look at this, Canva was the first kind of intuitive AI opportunity for people who were not designers, people who were not working in, true design platforms, to go in and make their own poster. Now, let me ask you, can you tell when somebody who does not know design uses Canva and somebody who does know design uses Canva?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like me using a hammer in the house. When, I use the hammer, there's holes everywhere.
So when we think about that's AI, when somebody is when you meet somebody who is a journalist. I mean, I talked to a gentleman yesterday he has a PhD in governmental journalism, and I can guarantee you that what I would put out from ChatGPT on government journalism, even if I massaged it, would not even come close to what he could do with the tool. He would just do it 3 times as fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so valuable, right, in this day and age. But we should do an episode all about AI at some point. We haven't really done this, but
I have we have had a concept of a show that we want to eventually start just called Two Brothers, and it's about having seasons. Right now we know that the seasons have to be about 13 episodes, and each one of these seasons are around a specific interest. So one of those seasons could be AI, and we discover everything from AI on the creative world, and then we go and discover everything on the AI on the medical world and all these capabilities, and we just learn all along.
I think your idea of the Two Brothers show was very different to what it was in my head. That's okay. discussion for something else.
Is there a show called Brother Brother or
Brother, Brother?
We're Out? Yeah, Brother Brother.
Who
Brother
knows?
Brother would be
I
funny.
mean,
Brother.
Welcome to Brother Brother. Yeah, I don't know.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I will take your advice. You've been in broadcasting.
Yeah,
for many years,
exactly.
so yes,
She
I'll
knows what
take
she's
it.
talking about.
Yeah.
I wanted to. So down in Warm Springs, Montana, Warm Springs, Hot Springs, Warm Springs, Montana. There is I think it's Warm Springs. There's a studio production house that puts out a lot of like National Geographic content, and they travel all around. And we had pitched to them. Mama's Boys as a renovation show because
Yeah.
I have two boys. One is good is the money one, and one is my hippie. I can take anything and build anything out of it.
Yeah.
And these two guys, my sons are just crazy. And I'm sitting there going, can you imagine a show? I'll be the real estate agent, and these are Mama's boys. And my boys are both redheads. They're both redheads, 6'4" gingers.
Wow.
They're going,
Wow.
they're going, I don't know if I want to be called Mama's boys. But it's sellable. It's sellable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had this idea about the Bizros, like what's it called, sitcom comedy show type of Friends, How I Met Your Mother style, where it's like the two brothers with the people in the studio, people coming in every day in the studio and just documenting that with like 3 different stages. And one day it will happen. We'll see.
Well, it'd be interesting to interview like celebs with their siblings. Like if you look at Brene Brown, right? She has her 2 younger sisters. She has a podcast. Her younger sisters are twins. It'd be really cool to host a podcast for siblings. Right?
Yeah.
So
that would be a good.
How do you navigate the Thanksgiving holiday without killing your siblings?
Yeah. I mean, just today I was listening to an episode of they were talking about these big influencer businesses like Kylie Jenner, for example, or like Jessica Alba, but not about them, but about the operator, the person that actually runs the business. Super interesting. So kind of like a concept like that for brothers and sisters. But Kim, this has been an absolute pleasure. I mean,
I'm just gonna say we can buy brotherbrother.com for $5,600.
Pocket change.
There we go,
if
brother.
somebody wants to gift it
I like
to
that
us
idea. I like that
online,
idea. Actually,
let us know.
Brother. I think it's a catchy name.
And
Sounds
I
like
think you need to have banjo music. So I don't know if you guys have seen that show, Brother, Where Art Thou? Where Art Thou?
Yeah, it sounds to me like a Disney movie, Brother.
No, it was George Clooney, and it was one of those indie kind of off, but it's so good. Watch that.
Okay.
Do Brother, and that's the type of soundtrack.
Wait, what is it that we need to watch, brother? What?
Oh, I think it's Oh Brother, Where Out There.
Yes, that they're kind of escaping the jail or something. Like,
yes.
is that it? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I've seen the movie. It's really good. I just can't remember the title.
It's really good.
Okay,
It's
I will.
really
I will
good.
be able to find it. Okay.
Cool,
Okay.
cool.
All right.
We'll take your advice, Kim. As we wrap up, last question, right? Like, where will you be today if you never published, if you never put your message out there?
I would still be me, but I know that the gal that phoned me during COVID that was running into huge situation around, her daughter, she found out that there was an abuse issue going on, and she didn't know how to talk to her daughter. But because I had shared it on a podcast, I had somebody reach out going, how do I talk to my daughter? That one person I impacted. The real estate agent that came to me that was doing 7 transactions a year and is going to close out this year with probably 35 transactions and being a top 1%. So these are things that you talk about. And if you share your zone of genius, if you share your passion, if you share who you are unapologetically,
Yeah.
I guarantee you there's somebody that just needs that. They need to know that they're not alone. They need that hand up. They want to succeed, but they need that example that they feel connected to. And that's why I believe podcasting is so critical in the sense of you only need one person at a time changes the entire world.
So good. That's pretty clap for that.
That was so good. That
Highest
was so
praise
good.
and contents profit.
I'm just gonna say, when we edit this part, we need to put like a full-on motivational music at the bottom, just rising up, from silence. Yeah, it was epic. That was epic. I love it.
Mao is cussing at you right now. Yeah.
Sorry, Mava. It's okay.
Anyways, Kim, it's
That was
been a
amazing.
pleasure. Thank you so much. I am so stoked for the people to listen to this episode. We went all over the place, but it all made sense at the end, and I love it. Those are the best conversations. Fonzie, anything else that you want to add?
Thank you. That was very refreshing. I loved meeting you. It was, it satisfied all the curiosity that I had. So it was a great conversation. I really appreciate you.
Kim, anything else you want to add before we actually head out?
I'm just going to say, speak up. Your story matters.
Let's
That's right.
go.
With that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning to the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at Beast Bros Co.
That is right. And if Kim here help you move one step closer towards your goal, please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys. Take care.